When we start talking about measurement and target setting, people in the companies we're engaged with to help get nervous. Not excited, nervous. And it's not because they're lazy or don't want to be held accountable. It's because they've learned, often through painful experience, that targets become weapons. Let me explain what's actually happening. Most organisations are thin on the measurements that matter. They measure activity, the task completed, the project status, but not outcomes, not whether anything measurable has changed. So when you start to say, we're going to define metrics that tell us whether we're succeeding and set targets, people hear, we're about to discover that you're not performing and there may be consequences. But of course that's not what you meant, but that's what was heard. And they're not entirely wrong to be nervous. Most organisations have no idea how to set targets well, and there's more to it than deciding that you want to hit a specific number by a certain date. They don't consider target confidence, for example. It can be low when it's a new metric with no baseline and trend data versus an established metric. Plotting the next step desirable point on the curve is much easier. They don't clarify the level of ambition. Is this a can-hit target or a deliberately aspirational stretch goal? And they don't acknowledge an individual or team sphere of influence, whether this team is the only one driving this metric or whether 10 other factors are at play. Without that context, a target can be perceived as unfair or a trap with no get-out-of-jail-free card. There is often a history of this. Organisation sets targets, teams miss some of them, and then, here's the critical moment, teams get punished, blames, passed over for promotion, maybe even let go. And then you know what happens next. People learn. They learn to avoid targets. And where they can't be avoided, they lowball, setting safe targets that they know they can hit. The organisation wanted outcomes, ambition, agility and experimentation. They got play it safe and self-preservation. So here's why all of this matters for growth. Outcome-oriented organisations, the ones that measure and target actual results, not just activity, execute strategies significantly better than output-orientated organisations. They drive materially higher growth. But you can't just flip a switch. You can't go from measuring tasks to measuring outcomes and expect people to embrace it. It's a change, it's a journey, and trust comes only after targets have been set. Some have been missed, and this is the critical part. It was not a negative experience. They need to see it to believe it. One cycle is not enough. You need to prove that ambitious targets are genuinely okay to miss, not just on a poster, in reality, in promotion decisions, in performance conversations. Context matters so much more than the number. You'll look at what they learned, what changed, what they influenced, not just whether they hit 100%. Outcomes trump outputs. That doing the work matters less than moving the metric, that being busy is not the same as being effective. And this is why organisations struggle to execute strategy. This is why OKRs fail more often than they succeed. This is why companies get stuck in low growth, not because they don't have a strategy, not because they don't have talent. It's because they're measuring the wrong things and are not optimising to get the right results. So before you use OKRs, before you demand ambitious targets, before you wonder why people are sandbagging, ask yourself, have we built the capability to measure what matters? Have we created the context that makes targets feel safe? Have we proven through actual behaviour, not just words, that we're more interested in learning than blaming? Because if you haven't, you're not building an outcome-oriented organisation. You're just adding more measurements to an already fearful culture.